Good morning, Reaper people. This is Anne. Welcome to Painting Big and Reaper Pro Tips. Both of them. It's all of it. It's Painting Pro Tips Big. That's what it is. Ah, dear. It's still Monday, isn't it?
You'd think so, yeah.
Yeah, well, for Justin, it's definitely Monday. Justin overslept. He's a sleepyhead. And then
Very much
for
so.
me also, it's just every morning it seems like something happens to derail my best laid plans of like having extra time in the morning. Like, it's just those days where you're like, yeah, I'm 15 minutes ahead. When you wake up, you get out of bed, you do your chores, and then something happens and it sucks up that 15 minutes, except that then it sucks up another 5, and you're just like, oh no, now I'm late. How did this happen? Well, that was pretty okay. I was not too bad this morning. I did something with my hair. Planer, you haven't seen me since, I trimmed it a little bit up on the sides. I cut my own hair, so I have for years. When you have longer hair, it's fairly easy. So I'm just, it's maybe a little bit flat today. I don't know. I put stuff in it, so it's possible I put a little more product in it than normal. Yeah, but yes, Declarement. Real life gets in the way, and the life is somewhat surreal. So maybe the new saying should be surreal life gets in the way, because during COVID, it seems like we're all living in this Twilight Zone reality where everything that we used to get used to is no longer a thing. But hey, David and I went out on Sunday night and had a real dinner at a real restaurant, because outdoor seating is open here in California. Just outdoors, no indoor capacity or anything yet. Since they have nice weather right here, it makes sense. So we went out to a very nice restaurant to finally, exactly 2 months late, celebrate the day that I came here. So yeah, I'm on my 2-month anniversary, 2-month and 2-day anniversary of moving to California now. Thanks, Planer. Yeah, it is what it is. I don't have time to properly do my hair in the morning, not without missing breakfast, and to me breakfast is more important than my hair, so priorities. Hey Noedzik, how's it going? Yeah, Twilight Zone reality. I feel weird. I don't know. Well, for me it's even more Twilight Zone, since I went from working 40 hours a week at Reaper or more, and then I moved to working for myself. So it's double Twilight Zone for me, right? So it's all weird. Do. Yes. But Mathophile, it was spread out tables. They were skipping every 2 tables, pretty much. And they could have just skipped 1 and everybody would have still been, 6 feet at least apart. They had a decent sized patio. But yeah, it's one of the places that we actually went there for New Year's Eve when I was visiting David for New Year's Eve. And it's a very nice, we are foodies, so we love our really nice restaurants. So this was really, as David said afterwards, he's like, this is the most normal thing I've done in 4 months, normal as far as being part, we used to live. So yeah. You just twisted up and put a stick in it. Super Sarah. There you go. See, my hair is too fine for that. It's really baby fine, so I have to do something to it. I have to put product in it and do something with it, or it'll just go frizz and look terrible and flat. So yeah. But on the other hand, I'm also graying at the temples, which I love. I'm so glad that I got the gray at the temples gene. I like my silver streaks. I usually get my silver streak right where it's going over, that you can see sometimes in some light. No, I won't do that. I will not start painting my own hair. Hey, Eggy Spill Scale, thank you for the 6-month sub. Oh, and that reminds me, guys, we're going to do our AMA this Friday, and we're going to do the giveaway during the AMA. So tune in this Friday. Friday is apparently our special sauce as far as painting pro tips goes. So, I know why I'm confused. Hold on. Oh, boop. I didn't have my toolbox logo up. Bad me. See, now I'm properly branding. That's the problem when I'm using the same scene as a shortcut when I'm doing videos for the Patreon and videos for you guys and stream for you guys. So you know how it goes. Gray here and there everywhere. So color it red. Oh, I like gray. See, my mom went gray naturally. She didn't color her hair, and I always respected her for that. And when you've got this color of hair, it's also it looks kind of good. It looks kind of silver and gold. It's kind of like you're going lighter rather than grayer. But it really depends on your hair color, right? As far as how good it looks. So, alrighty. Yeah, I wasn't sure what this tree was. I know Image of a Trail, right? Ah, dear. Alrighty. I suppose we should do some. Do I put in more hours for myself? Hold on. I missed a question, and it was a good question, so I'm going to go back and look at it. Kazmania, do you put in more hours for myself, or was it at Reaper? Kaz, honestly, I think I've always tended a little bit toward workaholic on when I'm working for myself, because I have tried this once before. I did it very poorly because I was much younger and more foolish when I first tried freelancing. I'm doing it much more competently now, but the real problem with freelancing is that it creeps, like the day creeps on you. Like you end up like working on your commissions at night. Like you try to set up the 8-hour workday and somehow it creeps into the evening, and it's hard to track too, because I'm home and like I'm caring for Kiri, and Kiri's very unpredictable. So sometimes if she has an emergency, we have to run outside and I lose 20 minutes, and when that happens twice during the day, then I've lost almost an hour, plus lunch. And it's just weird. Like freelancing really challenges you to time manage yourself, to track your hours. You've got to treat it like a business. I would say that overall, it's probably very similar to what I was putting in at Reaper. I'm trying very hard to stick to 8 to 9 hours a day during the week. And some days a little shorter, and some days it's a little bit longer. So I'm trying to really do a straightforward schedule on this. Hey, good morning, Daffod Weir. Yeah. Right, asterisk, right? And I could do that, but I'm actually am a morning person, so actually this schedule works for me. The whole get up around 7ish and I get up at around the same time as I did in Texas, to be honest. And then it just takes time to get ready and be ready for the stream, and stream at 9:30 my time. And then the rest of the day is working on Patreon stuff, working on commissions, working on my writing, working on, this, that, or the other thing, that sort of stuff. Examples for the Patreon, prepping stuff and writing PDFs, things like that. All right. Yeah, real world. No, it's the surreal world. I'm convinced. All right, let's get to stuff. I have a pack tortoise. I've wanted to paint this model since I first saw it. I'm sure you all love it. You can blame David that we don't have the little card for it, because he unwrapped it this morning, and I think he trashed the card, where I normally keep the card, so it's a nice reference. We're going to put Guy aside. There's nothing special about Guy. We don't care about the Draymond. To heck with you, Draymond. Your tortoise is really cooler than you. So I thought maybe we'd do some Tortoiseshell, because it's fun, and he has enough shell showing. I like painting critters, so I thought we would do some shell. And then maybe we'll talk about, he's actually a pretty good subject for talking about using different colors of leather on a piece, to make it, to make different colors of leather stand out, because he's got a lot of different packages on him, so we might do that. This is a very bad model for OSL, despite the lantern, because the lantern is way, way up here, and it's also behind. So it backlights, and so we could talk about that on a different day, why OSL in this model is actually not recommended. But I could show you guys a little bit of it anyway. Helping out my button bat, taking the blame for can I open it? Was that what the first thing that came out of his mouth? He hadn't seen the tortoise before. Gray stripe down your black beard. That's very applicable, dwarf mind. For dwarfiness, I mean. Morning, Rathmore, morning. Yes, indeed. Let's see. I actually have that many. Yes, I try to choose minis that are awesome so that you guys will actually have them. Yeah, well, I mean, you've been considering this pack tortoise. It is funky, right? So, okay, so let's talk about Tortoiseshell. I have some examples. And you could paint them anyway. I mean, come on, it's fantasy, right? You could paint the Tortoiseshell any way you want. But there's some really cool Tortoiseshells out there. And most of the time you're dealing with a dark outside edge in various shades of brown or brownish gray. And then you're dealing with lighter interiors. And the pattern can vary as to whether it's more square or round, or tetrahedral. I don't know. And sometimes there are spots, and sometimes there are stripes, and sometimes they're very dark. So the way that you do it, but you do want to note one thing, and that is that if you see this shell is shiny. you can see the light reflecting off of it. So you could play with that as well. Remember that the shell can be shiny. Sometimes in these photos are lacquered, so you kind of have to take it, with a grain of salt. But we can kind of look and get some ideas of how a tortoiseshell looks from looking at all of these different photos. As always, I do like to work from reality. So we can see that sometimes there are sharp bands on the outer edge. When a shell's actually on the turtle, you can see that as well. Sometimes they kind of fade in. I clicked too hard. No, I clicked too far. My phone is very angry at me now. So then you can get ones like this that have like striping and radiating patterns going out. So, the challenge is really to kind of just choose a pattern that you think that you can do, and work with that. This one's nice because it has a nice strong light source too. But let me get back to where I'm going, and there we are. My phone is very angry with me. So let's figure out some colors, because we, obviously there are some orangey browns. We can take off, if we feel like this kind of interferes with things, we can take this off. It's probably easier to paint around it without the packs all over the place. And the packs do kind of get in the way a little bit, like not a lot. You can still paint it in there, but I think it is much easier to paint it this way, so we can work with that. Oh no, we have some water in our pack still. I washed this morning instead of last night because I had forgotten that I hadn't taken it out of the blister, so I gave it a quick wash. So with browns and tans that you can use, as you could see, some of the browns that we were looking at were quite gray. So you could go with, actually, if you're going for a grayish turtle shell, two colors that would be pretty good, and they're very close, although this one is more gray. Desert stone and desert sand would be very good colors to use if you wanted that more grayed out tortoise shell. If you wanted a little warmer, you could go with driftwood brown. I would probably, I don't know what kind of turtle it is, actually. It could be a Kim. Well, no, because I think it's got a normal turtle shell. It's just the palanquin, the saddle here, makes it look taller. And I'm pretty sure this is just meant to represent all of the goods heaped up on it, this chunk. So if you want to go there, we could go there. I would probably go with brown liner or walnut for the really dark parts, but you could also go crazy and go with a bluish black. Get some contrast, like blue liner or black indigo. Could go with those instead, or even nightmare black if you wanted really blue. But if you go in really blue, then I'd go saturated on other things. Instead of going with a grayed out brown, I might go with, polished leather, rich leather, 9073 chestnut. Let's grab that one second. I think I've got it I've got it over here somewhere. Oh no, I don't know where I stuffed it. There it is. So let's talk about tans. Let's see here. There we go. Chestnut gold. Though you may not immediately think of this color when you're thinking about tortoiseshell, but if you want a decent tan, you could go with golden skin or golden skin shadow. Those are pretty saturated and a little lighter. So, if you want to go there. Other colors that I do not immediately have at hand that would be good for that. You notice that there was a fair amount of yellow in some of those shells. You could go with the amber gold, tanned leather amber gold, golden blonde very easily if you want to do it that way. I think I'm going to go with, let me get back to my photo. I think I'm going to go with a kind of a golden color with blue. That lets me go maybe green with the... Because I have to think ahead, too, on what I want to do with the skin. And I might want to do kind of add some green tones into the skin. So to make that work, I think I want to choose some contrasting colors for this shell. I think I want to go with blue liner. Because indigo, I don't want any purple in it. I think I want to also go with kind of a shell pattern like that, which is really kind of pretty. You can see that it's got a very dark kind of blue-black around it, and then it's got one layer interior of that that's more of a rich brown, and then it goes up toward a golden color. And you can see the striations for sure. Like, there's definite bands of color that you can see in there. And that's really pretty, and it also goes with Like this pattern on this shell is very similar, so I think I could duplicate it very well. So, no, I think I want to go blue. The thing is with Dwarf Mine, you could go walnut with this, no problem, and you'd still get a fair amount of contrast. But if I want two colors in the shell, then, this is an opportunity to put in like a black, a really dark blue, or a really dark purple, or even a really dark green if you wanted. That could be fun. Here in this, the highlights on this really dark part definitely look bluish black to me. Like, so it's probably just a very glossy black, but I like the opportunity to put a different color in the shell, so it's not just one, it's not just brown, right? So that's up to you, whether you want it more neutral and just to bring it out with the different patterns, or if you want to, here, I'm going to actually take a photo of this, a quick screenshot, and then I'm going to just move over to off of the interwebs and onto into my photo gallery, so I can reference these right away. So, all right, so let's look at our happy turtle shell. So he's going to have some dark lines between his edges, and then he's going to have some bands, and we can paint those in. Now, I don't think the sculptor has sculpted this thing. Is this a weeby, Justin?
Is this what? Sorry.
Is this a weeby sculpt?
Let me see here.
I think it is. He usually does the animals.
I'd say flip it over and check.
There is only underside of turtle. There is no information.
No, I mean.
I see. I see. The weeby parts. Yeah. No turtles. Oh, Sharky, it's just whenever you see, well, here's a rule for you. It's not really that hard. Whenever you see like this blue highlight, it's kind of you see that's got a little bit of blue in it on this really dark part in that highlight. That means that you can go like with a blue black on it. Like it means it's probably actually a deep black and it's reflecting the sky. But it does also mean that you can choose to go blue instead and get a similar effect like this. So, and whenever you're dealing with a blue black, like a black that's super dark, that like a black leather that has blue highlights, I tend to start with a black that already has blue in it, and that means liner. That means blue liner. So,
it was Ruby.
Yeah. It was Ruby, good.
No, what was it? Kurinek, I was not asleep. I was
I think
yelling at my cat. She's messing around with my power strip, and I don't want her to shut my computer off.
Let me see. What am I going to go with? I think I'm going to go with 9430.
Kind of being a turd this morning.
9430 looks about right. Let's do that. So first we're going to go in 9430. And the color that I'm looking at right now is, when I make that call, is I'm kind of looking at like this brown color here. And that looks very similar. This is actually a little greener, but I can work with that. So I'm looking like that. And I'm looking at blue liner. And then if I know out of experience that if I add some yellow to this and some white, I can get it to go up a little bit to this golden color. Polished leather is a very, very versatile color. It looks brown and kind of orangey, but when you add white to it, it goes a lot more golden. And so it's a nice naturalistic color to keep in your palette when you're doing beasts and animals and natural things that would have a lot of brown and golden tones. It's a really good color for that. So let's pop that down and do that. I'm just going to base coat in this color. And if I need it to cover a little better, because it can be a little translucent, then I'm going to add some white to it, because most of the shell is lighter anyway. The reason I would start a little darker than this and not just base coat in this light tan color is because I want to be able to add these little lines and patterns. So if I start darker, then I can essentially highlight by putting in these lines, and that will help me. This is actually, when you zoom in on it, very intricate shell. So I think this is going to be fun.
Miss Demp pointed out that the differences are that a male has a concave shell.
Shale. You're
but,
dealing with your other South Texas, East Texas.
Yeah, you'd think so. But the problem is I expect Weeby to put genitals on virtually everything, even when it doesn't anatomically expect that.
No. Jason is hardcore about his realism in animals. I mean,
That's
where the Weeby junk comes from in the first place. So I don't think he would, just
No,
manifest.
he wouldn't. But I love to think that he would, because it's Weeby, and I spend a lot of time with Weeby. In fact, I spend a lot of time with a lot of the artists now.
Yes.
Before we really started getting all these shows going, they weren't. Like, I talked to them occasionally, saw them during the Reaper Artist Con, and then kind of talked to them then. But I talk to them semi-regularly now.
Yeah. I'm gonna try something. I added 1 drop of white to that, and it makes a beautiful golden color, as you can see. But it is a little orange, so I'm actually going to try the same thing with its cousin, Rich Leather, which is 9429. And this is a good color thing for you guys to take note of, is how these really saturated browns shift differently when you add white. Off the bat, these guys this one is orangier and yellowier, and this one looks a little greenish. Then they're otherwise this could be a highlight for this, and sometimes I use it that way. But when you add white to them, they act very differently. Adding white to a color usually will tell you kind of what the foundation of that color is. If you see it shift very yellow, you're almost certain then that it's built in a yellow base. And you have to factor that in, because then if you mix it with a color or shade it with a color that has black in it, it might go green on you. So kind of sometimes you just want to take your colors, your darker colors, add a drop of white, and see what you can learn from that. So here, this is going to go a lot more muted, a lot more grayed out, right? See that? See how grayish? That's consider this is so vibrant. This is more grayed out. What it tells you then is that Rich Leather has a little bit of black in it. That's what's causing the greenish color that it's got, because it still has a lot of yellow, but when you add white, that black and white mix to gray out the color. So that's a very interesting thing to know. It helps you when you're mixing colors, and it may also help you choose a highlight. It may mean that you don't mix this color with white very much, and maybe you use maybe a pale yellow to highlight it up instead if you want it to stay saturated. So I'm looking at these colors, and I think actually that these are pretty good. I think that this one is a better straight up base coat, because I can see it relating better over here to what I'm looking for. I think if I add more yellow or more white to this one, it's going to get up to this nice golden color here. So I think I'm going to base coat with this, which is 4 drops of Rich Leather, that's 9429, and 1 drop of pure white. And that should give us a nice golden brown tortoise shell, even though it's a little bit muted, but it's not too bad. And we're going to be doing a lot of highlighting, so let's do the butt end of the turtle, because why not, right? I'll base coat the entire shell, since I have to wait for this to dry to get anything done with it anyway. And of course I haven't taken off my mold line, because I never take off my mold line when it's for the show, because usually I just don't have the time. We'll do a little bit of a scrape though. Bones Black is so nice to work with the hobby knife. You could just scrape off the mold lines usually. With just a little bit of pressure. I haven't tried something like the Games Workshop mold line removal tool on this. Have you, Justin, ever on Bones Black? It doesn't work on regular bones, I don't think. Guess I could find out if it would work. Justin has left us again. I agree with you, Kerniko. I bet he's napping. He always blames his cat, but it's easy to blame the animal. So let's try. Now, the Games Workshop has a mold line removal tool for styrene, and it really is, it works like the back of the X-Acto knife blade. So, if you can shave off, yeah, I bet it would work on this. Maybe not as well as it does on styrene. Yeah, the blade works a little better. Bones Black's a little bit too hard, I think.
Dwarf Mine. The planes are going. They're going all right. There's a lot of stuff. It's not moving super fast right now, because there's a lot of communication we have to do between artists and making sure that people are kind of ready to go, and technologically what they want to do, that kind of stuff.
Socrates. Yeah, go ahead. Keep going.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to actually answer Socrates' question. Socrates, I have talked about this before. I'm going to talk about it forever because I believe in it. So, okay, I prefer a well palette. And the reason that I prefer a well palette is that I use a lot of very thinned paint. And when you're using really thin paint, a wet palette, all that's going to happen is that the paper is going to wick the moisture out of your paint down into the sponge when you put a lot of water on it, because it's trying to equalize things. And I don't like that. I like to be able to mix my paint to exactly the consistency I want and then keep it that way. So I use a well palette for that reason, because once you mix up your paint, as long as you're using large enough paint puddles, your paint's going to actually stay at a decent consistency for quite a while. And the more paint and water you use in these, and these are tiny little wells, they're barely the size of my finger, as you can see. So essentially, when you put a lot of fluid and paint in these, very little surface area is exposed to the air, so your paint will stay at the consistency you need it to stay. This is especially useful when you're doing things like washes, glazes, and layering, like blending, because you're using thin paint for that. And it's very hard, like almost impossible on a wet palette, to keep your paint at the consistency you need it, because you've always got that interaction between the sponge and the paper and the paint. So instead you can't really control your paint consistency. It means that when you're trying to do blending, it can be very difficult if you're trying to get a smooth blend, because you need to pretty much mix up separately every brushful that you apply to the model, which to me gets very old very fast. So I don't want to do that. I do a lot of smooth layering, smooth blending, and I also do a lot of textures where I want my paint consistency to be precise so that I can get the effect I want. For me, to have to remix every brushful of paint is a pain in the butt. Some people love it and they get amazing results with it. Usually you're looking at a more painterly style then, with a lot of texture and a lot of brushstrokes showing. I like a lot of a smoother take on things, so I use this. And for beginners, for people who are new to painting, I recommend trying both. First realize how they both work. Like, right, if you're using thicker paint, then and doing a lot of like wet blending maybe, or base coating, then a wet palette will absolutely save you some stress, because your paint won't dry out in a palette. But if you are doing any thinned paint application, you can get better results, especially when you're learning, because when you're learning, you still don't know your paint consistencies really well. So, and you have to get a feel for that. And having to try to mix it every time on a wet palette can really kind of set you back and make it take longer for you to learn the paint consistency that you're looking for any given application. So often, that's why I recommend the beginners try both. And kind of understand first what each is good for, what each is good at. I mean, for spot blends and fast painting and a very painterly look with a lot of brushstrokes or texture, wet palette really does excel. If you're blending a lot. Also, if you're blending colors a lot, wet palette is really useful if you have a lot of colors open. But if you are trying to be precise and you're trying to do a lot of smooth blending, the wet palette can be a huge frustrator for you. And my approach is all about trying to reduce the amount of frustration that you guys run into, because a lot of people stop painting or get convinced that they'll never progress any further. And a lot of the time it's just that, you have gotten hung up on a frustrating thing, and if anybody had told you, you might have been able to work around it. So, all right, so we've got that. Letting it dry. Let's see here. Oh, I thought we had a link to my palette on that we could link in this chat.
Yes, we should actually.
Well, palette looks really small.
Tools, yes.
Elivern, yeah, it's a tools command, and I got mine from Cheap Joe's Art Supply, which is, it's porcelain. Make sure you get the porcelain palette. Sometimes they call it a ceramic palette, but a porcelain palette, you're getting it. This is not plastic. That's why it cleans up really nice. I hate plastic palettes because it's so hard to clean them after a point. Once you get any abrasion on the plastic, the paint sticks to it like a glove. It just won't come off without a lot of scrubbing. And this thing with the porcelain, you can just throw it, in the sink with some hot water, a little bit of like 409 or other cleanser in it. Simple Green is what I use a lot, or even Method. Any spray cleanser for your kitchen. Let it sit for a couple of minutes in hot water with spritz of that, and then the paint really peels right off and really easy. Like if I have to use a green scrubby, I have to use it minimally. It's a very fast cleanup, and I just stick it in my dish drainer. So I do find that this is a really good option. Let's see here. I'm going to mix up this color. But yeah, everything in painting has a use, right? There's all sorts of tools out there, and you get all sorts of mileage from them. And how much mileage you get, let me see if I can get a zoom here. Then let me get a focus. There. How much mileage you get is going to vary, and it helps when you know the whys of things. Why would you use a wet palette? Why would you use a bigger brush? Why would you use, why would you thin your paint, and how much, and what brush stroke exactly are you using to get smooth blends? What does a glaze look like? There's all these tools, and so watching a lot of different videos or asking a lot of questions when you can get a live chat like this is a really good idea. Because it gives you the whys, and the whys let you make decisions about, well, does this sound like a technique I'd be interested in trying? And this is the information I need, okay, to make a success of this technique. I love to teach people who are new to the hobby and people who are intermediate and trying to really refine their skills for that reason. Is I love to make it easier. Because when you remove that level of frustration, then you can see some real results. That gets you excited about painting. And then, you keep at it, right? You stay in the hobby, and that's what I'm all about. So that's what my Patreon is all about too. Is there's a lot of the $2 tutorials are more of a basic nature, and then I'm starting to work up and do more like competition level stuff in my $10 tutorials. So it's all there because I want to demystify the process for people, and sometimes that's kind of comes off as a little bit of paint by numbers, but I would rather do that than do something that looks like magic that you guys can't even have a hope of duplicating, right? I just like to explain every step that I do as much as I can. All right, let's see here. I'm just going to catch up on chat here. Yeah, Real Cheap Army. It's really hard to find these palettes in the hobby stores. A lot of times these are called mixing trays, and you can find them under like the calligraphy category. Let's see here. Ooh, wow, $4.99. That would damn, Otter Mama, you should have told us. That way we could all have ordered super cheap, awesome palettes. Yeah, when you're doing like a rainbow gradient, a lot of wet blending, and you need thicker paint, Gren, exactly. That's really good for, they're still on sale. Oh, awesome. Maybe I'll get a couple extras. Sweet. I'm just catching up here. Catching up. Yeah, exactly, Socrates. That's what it's all about, right? Is learn stuff from other painters and then try to figure out what part of it might apply to your style, right? Try different stuff. It's a Kathy Wapple. Oh my gosh. Hi, Kathy. Yes, here I am, and here's a pack tortoise. And then we've been talking more than we've been painting, as you can tell, which is just how it be sometimes. Let's see here. Black Wolf Magic. No, I'm not priming. I never prime my bones. I always just take them out and give them a good washing with hot water and dish soap, and then I let them dry, usually on a paper towel overnight. This morning I had to speed dry this guy. But yeah, I've never had problems, so I don't prime them. You can have problems with solvent primers and the PVC, so that's why I wouldn't recommend it. Yeah, no, you're not doing anything wrong, Elivern. I mean, different palettes for different people. Like, David, my significant other, he swears by his wet palette. There's no way he's even interested in switching. And he does amazing work with it, but he knows it like inside and out. And a beginning painter, it might not really work for them. So you got to try both. I've made myself paint for extended periods with the wet palette, and I've learned kind of how it works and why it works. And so now I can apply it when I need it. But often I find that I can do the same thing. If I just prepare, I can do the same thing with my wet palette. So I just don't even whip out the wet palette. Wet palette is good for travel. When you know that you're going to be called away from somewhere, like if you're going to be moving around. It's good for classes. If you know you might have to get up and move around and talk to people or watch a lesson and don't want your paint to dry. There's lots of applications for the wet palette. But I don't use it for a lot of stuff. Mini Wizard, adding white desaturates the colors. Yeah, it does a little bit, but it also But it does give you that what this color is made of thing, Mini Wizard. So like I was saying, if I add white to this, I can see very much so that this color has a very heavy load of yellow because it's still really vibrant. Whereas adding white to this let me know that there's a little bit of black in it. If I had added yellow, a light yellow to these, I would have gotten a more vibrant highlight. But I wouldn't have necessarily gotten that information about the underlying pigments. And really, it's very useful to know that there's a bit of black in this color. Things like that. And if you're me, maybe you knew that off the bat. But if you're a lot of people watching the stream, you might not have known. So yeah, if I'm building highlights, like I often would add something like NMM Gold highlight to this. Just like Mini Wizard says. Let me see here. Going. Hide Remain, it was the palette that I use, is currently on sale for $4.99 at Cheap Joe's. Yeah, Miss Dimp, exactly. They use for different techniques. Grin, thank you for the resub. Am I caught up now? Am I caught up with all the chats? Yes, I have. Yay! All right, we can finally paint. Sweet! Where's my turtle reference? Turtle reference! Ta-da! Such a pretty turtle reference. I love it. And actually, this wasn't quite dark enough, which is why I just put another dot of rich leather in it. I may actually put another dot of rich leather in it. Bloop. Because I ended up with more of a kind of a middle tan. I want it just a little darker for this outer edge. This outer edge here. This pretty color here. I want it just a little darker. So, and that's fine. Putting two layers of base coat on is what I do anyway. So, gives your paint a bit of durability. So, adding 2 more drops. So now it's a 6-to-1. 6 drops of the rich leather, 1 drop of the white, and it's going to essentially, as you can see, get darker and yellower, more saturated, because I'm lowering the amount of white in it. So that's good because this yellow is quite saturated. So it does. You do want to work with your colors on a similar level of saturation usually, if they're going to be right near each other. You could certainly put a very muted color next to a bright color in some circumstances. It works for accent colors, but often they will fight, and you don't want them to fight. We'll put a quick base coat on this. Then we'll actually, I think we'll put the dark on to outline our shell bits. And as you can see, I'm not caring really if I splash over onto other areas of the figure. This is why I like to paint figures in pieces. 1 piece at a time. So I don't have to worry about the fact that I got some brown on his neck there. I'm going to be painting that in a different color anyway. So yay. And the edge of the shell is probably actually going to be dark, so don't have to worry about painting the underside so much. Yep, turtle reference. Always, Kathy. Well, yeah, and you probably do the same. Like, whenever you're painting a natural creature, it's just so useful to actually get a good reference photo so you get some ideas, even if you don't use any of them, or even if you do it in totally different colors. Like, I could have done this in blue and pink, but but as long as I stayed true to the pattern of the tortoise from that reference photo, it would still look like it was a real tortoise. It would just be some weird blue and pink tortoise you've never seen before. I honestly just searched Tortoise Shell images, and that gave me Tortoise Shell, 2 words, because the 1 word tends to be the cosmetic, like glasses color or plastic. But yes, there's a Kathy grin. A Kathy has invaded our stream. I love it. Yeah, messy first face coats, exactly. All right, let's mix up our blue liner, because I did decide I wanted to go blue with this. Very, very, very dark blue with the edges for these. Let's do that. Blue liner, as you all are probably sick of me saying. As you can see, I love my blue liner because it's so faded, it's so old, and it actually is almost an empty bottle. And I think I forgot to order another one in my recent order, so I'm going to have it. I can't just walk out to the department and grab one anymore, guys. It's so unfair. So unfair. There we go. All right, so let's reference our turtle. Let's see how thick these stripes are. All right, so actually, if we look at the center of each shell portion, we can see that the dark line is probably only about 1/4 to 1/3 here on the outside. Probably more like 1/4, because you've got 4 bands really. If you look real close at this guy, there we go. So we've got this dark band, we've got this darker brown band, we've got a tan band, and we get around to a slightly lighter band here. It can be either lighter or darker. So I'm going to say about 1/4. So we can use that then when we block this in. So I'm going to throw some water into this blue liner, just a brush full. I've got about 5 drops of blue liner in there, so it's about a 5-to-1. 4 or 5-to-1 is a good base coat color, and I count this as a base coat. I want it to be solid. Actually, Dwarf Mine, the liners are one that I cannot just mix. I've moved, maybe Dwarf Mine doesn't know. I moved to California to be with my guy, so I'm not at Reaper anymore. But the liners are really hard to mix because the liners are in a very unique base, so they are chemically different from everything else. I could get a similar color by mixing pure black and one of my blues, but it wouldn't act the same way. So liners really are their own beast. Like, they're very, very different from everything else. That's why a lot of people find success with using them as primers, thinned down for base coating bones, is that they do actually have a different chemistry. So we're not gonna worry about any of the little line patterns yet. We're just gonna block in some of these shell bits, and we want to remember that, you know, from the center of a shell bit, it's only about a quarter, so it's really just a thin stripe. And we're going to double on it where the shells overlap, of course, because each shell is going to have a bit of it. You don't have to be perfect here. The nice thing about getting this basic pattern in now is that you've still got your base coat open, and you can easily touch up if you make a mistake. So don't sweat it. Just have fun and try to do the pattern. Little bit. Actually, I need to consult the edge of my turtle shell. So this is why we keep a reference photo. Always. There we go. I want to look at the edges. See, the outer edge is not actually dark on this particular shell. So I need to correct myself and put dark toward the middle and put light toward the outside. See, I wasn't looking at my reference photo, and that was my fault. Let's do that. Oh yeah, I still work for Reaper, Dwarf Mine. I'm still a Reaper employee. I'm actually Reaper's first remote employee, who's actually on payroll. The other remote employees, like our sculptors and our other painters, are freelance for the most part. So this is a grand experiment that Reaper has really been awesome in all of this, because, you know, I felt bad about leaving the company. I've been with Reaper for 17 years, you know, and they've been fantastic to me. So... but I really wanted to be with David, so they've been wonderful. So yeah, essentially, I get paid to stream now. I am a Reaper streamer, which is fantastic. And yeah, I can still you know, mail in an order to get supplies for the stream. So it's very nice.
It's kind of hard sometimes, and for me to remember that at one point, Ed and Ron had a big push for YouTube, and they didn't want to stream.
Yeah.
And I had to basically twist their arm, and now they couldn't imagine us not streaming.
Right, exactly. How things have changed. Well, I mean, there was a long time too that, like, they didn't want to go to PAX, and then we went to PAX and had a really good experience. You know, there's always new things to try. I mean, Reaper's been in the game for a very long time. And it's survived because the bosses are cautious and they don't, you know, overcommit, and they try things out carefully before they throw a bunch of resources at it, right? So, and sometimes that can be, like, frustrating, but often it's shown to be very wise. So it is good that they embraced the streaming, though. I think it's definitely nice. I know everybody on this stream loves to have their morning knowledge bomb, right? Hey, am I like coffee to you guys? or is it the opposite? I put you to sleep. The morning knowledge bomb. All right. Let's see here. Get this little one here. And then we're going to do some bands, I think. We're going to band up. Do some bands on this turtle. I need to get a little bit more color on the edges here. Because I do want a significant band of color here, because I want to edge these scales in a bit of blue, or these plates, I should say. Yeah, we do. We are known for having really good customer service. We're very proud of that. I'm glad that you have had that experience, Socrates. All right, so now we have to look and see, when we push this down, how much can we actually see? We don't want to waste our resources painting stuff we can't see. And I noticed that the detail disappears at a certain point in here, and this is why, because this pack comes in and covers a lot of it. I do think I need to push my my pattern back just a little bit to be under this. But it definitely doesn't need to go back very far. Just a little bit more. You can still see a little bit underneath the pack. All right, and I want to widen this out just a little. Then I want to do my brown stripe. Maybe I want to soften this corner so it's not quite as angular, because this is an organic shape. So there are very few like truly sharp angles. Often it'll be a little bit rounded off. So if you see a really straight edge, you might want to kind of make that gentler. And I can't decide. I think this is actually meant to be a stripe down the middle here. Poof. And again, I'm being very imprecise with this. You guys can see it. That's because I can always touch it up. I know I'm going to be doing some highlights with some lines here, so I'm going to be able to adjust a little bit. And I also want to get some brown in here. See, this is way too sharp for an organic creature, so I'm going to gently make it a little rounded. Boop. Sharp angles do exist here and there in nature, but it's often not on animals. Minerals would be more where it's at. Alrighty, we have a nice lined tortoise butt. Let us... I'm a nerd version of Good Morning America. That's great, Trashrama. I like that. I really like that. Oh, and I'm late lunch for some people. This is true. Yeah, I'm in the Bay Area, Serenity. You're right. I'm South Bay, actually. And our local game store did open up for like curbside pickup. I don't know. They're huge. Like, they're cavernous, the game castle is. So I don't know if they have like people in there shopping. And they just have to limit the number, or if they're only open for like pickup of games, like you purchase online, you go pick it up. I'm not certain about that. We haven't gone in because, well, David and I have plenty of stuff to paint. So it's actually been good. It's been a money saver, kind of, except when we go online and buy a pretty bus, which we actually one of mine arrived yesterday. Yeah, just open for normal retail in Texas, though, right, D. Clearman? Because I don't know if it's normal retail up here. Because up here, we haven't yet... California hasn't reopened to the extent that Texas has. All right, well, let's talk about doing a little bit of a darker brown rim. Because remember, we've got that really chocolatey brown right here. And so I think that russet brown would be a good call for that, $91.99. It's also a very saturated yellowy brown, so it goes well with our other saturated yellowy browns here. It's also got great coverage, so that's nice. We're just going to put a little rim inside, and this is what I was talking about, where we can correct our blue, our dark blue or black rim, because we know we're going to put a little bit of a brown rim inside of it. Oh, Santa Clara too? Awesome, interesting. Yeah, well, they are a really big store, so I could see how they could allow normal shopping, because they just really are like a mini game warehouse here. They've got a lot of gaming space here. Alrighty, so now we're just going to put another band down. So you can see how this is very forgiving. I mean, you need a little bit of brush control, but when I wanted to talk to you about this, actually, guys, is when you've got a challenge like this, where you do need a little bit of brush control, try not to approach it with the attitude of, oh, I need brush control for this, it's going to be terrible. Instead, think of it as practicing your brush control. This is actually a very forgiving model to practice your brush control on, because all of these plates are large. And like I said, if you mess something up, you can just go touch it up. You've got all these colors open. So just take it slowly and try to paint, evenly, and try not to cover up your blue liner. And don't sweat it too much. You can always correct it. If you feel like your brown gets too thick, you can take some of your tan and correct it. But this is because this is so repetitive, and because there are so many of these plates, and because they are pretty straightforward and pretty big, this is actually a great model to build your brush control on. So don't get scared of it. Embrace it as a learning opportunity, and understand that even if you don't do a perfect job on it, it's probably still going to look really good, because patterns like this tend to look great whether you nail them or you don't quite nail them. So don't worry about it, and just do it. And I am hereby endorsing the Pack Tortoise as a lining learning tool. And obviously I missed a little strip of tan there, but you don't sweat it. Just go back and correct it. It's no big deal. Because we're using thick paint and we're going on a base coating level at this point, we're just base coating a pattern essentially. We can just, touch up stuff with impunity. We don't have to worry about messing anything up. Also, don't worry if it's not totally uniform. Animals aren't. It's natural subjects are very forgiving. Let's see here what we got. Yeah, all right. Yeah. So game stores are a thing again. Lately we've been doing, David and I like a lot of busts, and so we've been doing a lot of online ordering from companies in Europe. I just got a shipment from the UK yesterday, which was actually a bust that both David and I are really excited about. Here, let me show you guys. Gotta show you guys this one because she's so pretty. I put her up on my Discord too, so my patrons probably have already seen her. But this is the model that we got yesterday. Look at that shoulder pad. This is from Galapagos. Beauteous, isn't it? Super fantastic. So there you go. Sorry, Reaper. Had to do a bit of a share there. But I love busts. I cannot lie. So she's beautiful. So yeah, we've been mostly doing that instead of shopping at stores in person. That and we have we just bought Gloomhaven, so our board game needs are also met for hours in the future. We just started playing it a few weeks ago. It's a good game when you want to play D&D, but you don't have a game currently. So we get that mapped in. Yeah, isn't it, Karniko? Hey, Margaret, it's good to see you. Yeah, it was too pretty to pass. Oh, it's amazing cast too, Embers. Really nice. I gotta say, looking at that bust, you can often tell, right, if a bust has been digitally sculpted or if it's been hand sculpted, and we're pretty sure, David and I, after looking at that one, that it's sculpted, with Fimo and green and stuff and not digitally. And I do have to say that in most cases, I really prefer the detailing, especially for hair and fur or feathers, on a bust that's done by hand. I really feel like 3D sculpting often just does not do a good job at those things. There are exceptions, but I think that I've heard the sculptors say that hair and fur are very difficult with 3D sculpting. So it's difficult to get a good execution. So maybe that's why. But all right, so we've got a pattern. Now we can play with it. Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful bust. Very happy to have it. Can't work on it. Have told myself I cannot work on it till I finish a couple other things. So I'm using it as a reward for finishing other busts or projects. Alrighty, now let's do some stripes. So I'm probably going to start, with the stripes in the tan areas because those are going to be the easiest. And the reason that they're the easiest is that you start with a dot toward the middle and then you can just put stripes around the outside. It only gets titchy when you get close to your brown and you have to have, your brush control lined up. But let's grab some of this yellow. And this is our 4-to-1 polished leather and white, I think. And I actually am going to lighten it just a little bit because these stripes are so little that you want contrast. If you try to do stripes and the color is too close, they're not going to show up very well because you have to do them so thin. So you do want a little bit of contrast here. So we're going to add more white. And you can see that really comes up to a pretty golden color. And it's not far off from some of this lighter gold color on my turtle. So I'm pretty happy with this. I'm going to add a little bit of water. I'm probably going to thin it down to about a 3-to-1. This is about what a 3-to-1 looks like. What 3-to-1 paint to water usually does, or around this, is it gives you a nice solid line, but it's still thin enough that you can do a fine line with it. And that's reasons to thin your paint, 101, is that you can get much finer lines by thinning your paint, and the paint will come off your brush easier when you thin it. So, haven't painted a bust. Yeah, actually, Embers, what I like to, there are lots of busts out there that are kind of academic busts. Some of them, like Hera Models, call them academic busts. So this is one, Hera Models Academic Elf Bust. I chose to paint him as a dark elf, but he's nice and simple. And smaller also. You can see next to the turtle, he's, not that much bigger than the turtle. So simple busts like these are a great way to practice. Reaper's Grudge Bust is also a pretty good practice bust just to tackle it, although it's big, but that's kind of to your place to you, because it's so large. You have a lot of room to work. The new busts for Bones 5, like the Julie Guthrie dragon with dragonette bust that I painted for Reaper, that's also a good, those are nice and simple, right? You want simple. So I'm going to put a dot here, guys, and then I'm going to work around it. So a dot, and then I'm going to enclose this dot in a square. That's roughly the shape of my tortoise scale here. And then I'm going to see if this yellow that I've mixed is too much lighter. And if not, if it is, I may just decide to glaze with it, because I want to be able to see my lines. So I'm going to do another one. Again, you're just going to do 2 little lines. And I can even start my other line here so that I can figure out how far it's going to go. So there's my setup. Is a dot with a box and then 2 lines. And I can even out my lines a little bit here, because this one's a little bit wonky. All right, so we got a wonky line that we have fixed. And now we're going to grow our little legs here, grow it a little higher, that we can connect our dots. Freehand is all about connecting the dots. Set yourself up so that you can just play connect the dots, and it takes a lot of stress out of freehand. Actually, when I say 3-to-1, guys, it's 3 paint, 1 water. So when I'm thinning, if I say 3-to-1 or 2-to-1 or 4-to-1, that's paint to water. If it's going to have more water than paint, which is very rare, then it's going to be like a 1-to-2 or a 1-to-3. So I'm using quite thick paint here, but it's thin enough to be pretty fluid and to come off the brush well. When you start putting more water in your paint, what you get is transparency, which is great for blending. But when you're trying to get a freehand effect like this, you want opacity a little bit. You want to be able to see your design and to not have to paint over it again. See, now here, I'm going to run into it because I've got more depth than I have width. So I'm just going to put a kind of a top on my little striation there. So I did 2, instead of doing, I did two horizontal lines off of this 1 vertical line, just to kind of make my pattern fill the space. Which is legal. Anything is legal to make it look good. As long as it looks good, you're good. Nobody's going to double check your turtle pattern, trust me. If anybody does, kind of those people are the button counters of our world. You guys know button counters? It's like a term they used to use for the historical community, painting community, because there are always people who would call you on the number of buttons on the jersey of your, Napoleonic dude. And it's it really has nothing to do with it, and you shouldn't be judged on something like that. So you shouldn't be judged also on whether your pattern for your fantasy giant tortoise is realistic enough, in my opinion. Yeah, Iggy. Yeah, you'd never want to use you almost never want to use more water than paint. In most applications, that's going to break your paint pretty quick. But 1-to-1 is where I kind of start with layering. And then 2-to-1 is kind of where I start, 1-to-2 is where I start with glazing. So applications that involve very, very thin paint, let's do a glaze. So let's grab our base coat tan here, because if I decide, let's say I decide this color's a little, this yellow's a little bit too strong, too garish. I don't like it as much. All right, gonna take this, and that's a lot of water. Like right there, I'm probably easily 1 to 2. That's what 1 to 2 looks like. So 1 to 2, like 3 to 1 versus 1 to 2, right? You can see the difference here. This has obviously got more water than paint. Still holding together pretty well, and that's a characteristic of Master Series. It doesn't separate very easily. It will eventually, but it doesn't separate real easily. So you don't have to remix your paint every time you're going to glaze. You want to test. I often test on my fingernail because I can see how light or dark that glaze is. You can see, you want to be able to see the glaze. You want it to change your underlying color, but you don't want it to see it very much. And then I'm going to paint this over this area. And I'm doing this to shift color. So I'm trying essentially to darken my golden color a little bit so that it looks a little bit more blended in with the shell. Those the button counters, yeah. There's always somebody, right? There's always somebody who's going to get really persnickety and detail oriented about stuff. And that's just the way they think. Like, and it's cool. It's cool. It's just don't judge other people on it, in my opinion. Now I'm going to take this tan that was our base coat, and I'm going to use it to do the stripe on the brown part. Now this is a little harder because you've got to make sure your stripe is centered, so you still have brown on either side. But you shouldn't sweat it too much because you've still got your brown right here. So if you mess it up, you can adjust it. It's not a big deal. Never is it a big deal. It is always just an opportunity for practice. There we go. I had to thin down my paint a little bit. And the reason I had to thin down my russet brown there is that I didn't put water in it to begin with. Or I put one brush full of water. So it was like 5 to 1. And it's not a deep enough well to keep itself wet yet. So I had to add another brush full of water. Now, once you get to 6 or 7 drops in one of these little palettes, wells, they actually will stay pretty good for a while. Like I haven't added more water to this, and it's still nice and wet and more or less the consistency I need. So once you have a certain number of drops, that's why I used to work, I work a lot with between 6 and 8 drops in each of my wells. That usually is enough. If I'm painting for a couple hours at a time, it's enough to keep the paint wet. So we have used our brown. I can narrow the lines here a little bit. So that's definitely coming up kind of like that tortoiseshell now. Let's see, let's look at our tortoiseshell. Yep, we want it to look like, here, tortoise, come, sit, stay. Yeah, we want it to have that, remember that nice brown does have stripes of that lighter tan in it. So that's what we're simulating. Now, this is very large and zoomed in, and you can see that there are lots of little lines in here. But just simplify it, guys. When you're doing a 28mm model and you're trying a freehand pattern, always simplify it. So, you know, what are we trying to do here? We're trying to get at least one lighter stripe in our brown area. Okay, we've got at least one lighter stripe in our brown area. So the color pattern here is now starting to look good. I do need a lighter center. So at this point, I'm going to come back out, and remember we glazed over this this pattern to make it more a little darker. But now I can come back with my previous yellow, and I can lighten up my center 2 stripes maybe, and leave the other stripes dark. Remember to paint on the exhale when you're painting a pattern that's fine and small. If you hold your breath, you are going to shake more, unless you are a weird mutant human who can hold their breath and not shake. But so now we've got a light yellow with, here, let me get up close. There, that's what we've got. This is what we've got right now. We've got a light yellow center with a lighter tan striations here with a darker tan background. We've got a darker brown, kind of chocolatey, with that tan stripe down the middle. Now we just need to do the bluish highlight on the outside, and we're good. And then we just have to do that on every single plate. So yes. You know, Mathophile, I think just by doing this, you can imply those lines. Okay, like if I was going super hardcore here, if I was going Super Saiyan Anne, I'd thin my paint just a tiny bit more. It also depends on how precise you want to get. because you can do a very rough, off-the-cuff approach to this. But if I was thinning my paint a little bit more, and I didn't want to be real simple, I'd probably go load it up just a tiny bit. Really thin paint means I can get a very sharp brush, and I could probably do, I probably would have started here, and I probably would have tried to do, like, how fine can I get? I can get pretty damn fine, but this is not for the faint of heart. Like, if I really wanted to do it, see that? See those lines? So you can get as fine as you want if you've got a brush that can do it. One sec. I knew it wasn't in focus when I was doing the stripes, but there you go. Yeah, so you can, with a very fine brush and very thin paint, get a much finer, you know, thing. But think about this too, and David talked about this in his stream. You're going to be looking at this model, you know, far away from yourself, right? Like, you've got all this space between you and it. So, you know, which of these looks better? Here, let's unzoom. I zoomed in again. I'm going to unzoom. And now let's focus. So which of those looks better when you're looking at it far away? You can see the pattern still from here when you're zoomed out. You can't see the pattern so much here, given I haven't like finished it. You can just see that there's a highlight, right? And there might be some texture. So think about your goals as far as what you want to do. So if you want your turtle pattern to show up very nicely, then think about it here. And if you really want to do fine work that's not necessarily going to show up from a distance, but that's going to wow people when you get up close, then you could try to do the very, very fine lines there. But as far as imply multiple lines Mathophile, this kind of does. I mean, you're dealing with people's perception and what you're suggesting. I think that when you suggest this, the other way to do it would be to like maybe make just super thin lines in a very limited area. So with my thinner paint, I could go here and say maybe try to do a couple of thinner lines at the edge just to suggest. Now, by doing these couple of thin lines, you've suggested that this line is more complicated. But it might not come off the way that you want because you haven't actually done that extra work. You've only done it at the edge. So, will it carry? That's a hard question. You really can't control the perception of the viewer. The best you can do is to present, you know, something that makes sense to you. I think that implying finer lines, I think that with freehand, you either do it or you don't. You know, anybody can look at this and think, oh yeah, if I zoomed way in and this was a real tortoise, there'd probably be more lines. But do you care? Aren't you just assessing the model as it, you know, as it would be? If you want to do really fine lines, then you are either going to lose impact at a distance, or you're going to need a bigger tortoise. In my opinion, it's all, what are you aiming for? You know, why would you want to imply finer lines? Like, for realism's sake, you could, but it's I think there's really it's either do or don't. I don't know that there's a way to imply. You're already implying a pattern here. Let me get some of my brown here and correct. I lost a little bit of a line here, and then let's do our blue. It's really hard to. Yeah, this is good practice. When I said this is good practice for freehand and brush control, this also, remember that any kind of practice with your freehand and brush control will improve your will improve your hand control for things like eyeballs and tiny buckles and things like that. Brush control is brush control. So if you can practice on a tortoise shell and get better at eyeballs, I mean, go for it. That's because that really is the effect. If you practice enough, then you get better at everything. All right, let's get some white in this blue liner. I think you can implication in textures is actually a very interesting question, Mathophile, because I think that you have more room to do that on a larger model. Because definitely, like on a bust or even on a giant, if you like imply a small bit of texture in an area, like say a cloth on a loincloth, maybe if you just imply a little bit of texture on the highlighted areas, or if you execute a little bit of texture on the highlighted areas, you are implying that entire thing has texture, right?
of that nature. So you could get away with it a little bit more there. Whereas here, with such small areas on a 28 millimeter model, even though he is big, I think you have less room for implication. Yeah, salt and pepper, actually, this is the same thing, is what we were talking about, is to imply the pattern, first you must create the blocks of color. Like, you need to, it's a step back and see the forest for the trees situation for implication on salt and pepper hair. You want to present the blocks of light and dark hair as, first you find a photo reference, just like I did for tortoise. Then you kind of look at the way it's blocked out, or if it's not blocked out. And then you try to execute a general pattern that implies the effect you're trying to do. Whether that's streaks or tiny bits of gray on each little hair strand. The difficulty of the pattern is just going to be dependent upon what your example is that you've chosen. So this blue liner obviously has grown into a blue-gray when I add white. I love this blue-gray. It's why I use blue liner and white an awful lot. We're going to come in here and put a nice blue line. I don't want to get it too far down. A little bit. And in reality, I'm doing this very much in a vacuum. I'm not paying attention to light sources right now. I'm assuming an even light source. So I'm more just showing you guys a bit how to do the freehand pattern. But in reality, if I were paying attention to light source, I'd want to put these light blue highlights wherever close to where the light is falling. Like for, actually this isn't too bad, but like if the lantern is up here, I would pay attention to that. Let me see if I can thin these down a little bit and kind of suggest that. But I am very much painting this pattern on in a vacuum right now. Like I'm not looking at light source. And there are a couple of different ways. There we go. So the blue, let me get a little focused here. The blue adds just a touch of a different sort of color. So it's a little more, you've got a little more color complexity when you introduce that blue. It's not all brown anymore. So it's a little more visually interesting, perhaps. Actually, yeah, since I've got that open, I can put my corresponding line over here. In reality, I probably wouldn't get much of a highlight there because it's kind of recessed in that crack. I didn't make my blue stripe quite wide enough up here. I can fix that now. I don't need to worry about it. But you can see there how that blue stands out next to the brown. So it's a nice touch because it's a slightly different color. I do think I need to thicken this dark line a bit. And thus I need to thicken my brown line. If I want my dark stripe to show up under the light and not just be in the recesses. And that's a call that you can make, depending on what you like. There. It's a bit more. There we go. So I decided to thicken my brown stripe a little bit there. Hello, God Emperor Bob. How are you? Yeah, but Mathophile, you've set yourself up a challenge with salt and pepper hair. It really is difficult to do it. It's difficult to do it at 28 millimeter. It may be slightly easier to do on a bust because you have the ability to pick out more strands. So maybe you can convey it a little bit easier. But it's still very difficult. And it's so very individual. So you really do need to like photo search for an example, a specific example, and try to duplicate what you see. And I would probably search for a salt and pepper beard that has definite patches of salt and pepper, definite grayer patches rather than just, little gray hairs spread throughout. Because especially on a 28 millimeter model, trying to do a little gray hairs spread throughout is really hard. Like, and I say that really hard at my level. Like, I would have a hard time with it. So let's see. What time is it, Justin? I haven't checked the clock for a while.
Weird. It's almost 1 o'clock for me.
Oh, wow. All right. So I guess we should probably look for a raid. Do you guys have any questions while Justin kind of wraps up and looks for somebody for us to go pester? There we go. You can see how these really fine lines that I did, although they may be more true to the original pattern, just really aren't as bold and don't really stand out to the eye, even as close as you are. There we go.
I've got the perfect raid for us.
Really? What?
We are going to be raiding zombies.
Oh, wow. There's a lot of zombies on our stream lately. I'm starting to think maybe the zombies have eaten your brain, Justin.
Yeah.
Justin's for sure. Like, you need another latte, man.
I wouldn't mind another latte. Actually,
Yes.
I wouldn't mind a espresso machine.
Oh, yes.
That's
You still haven't ordered one?
No, because every time I go to add an appliance to the countertop,
Uh-huh.
they just argue with me. So,
Actually, yeah, David and I had that discussion. He did get me a food processor, you guys. We actually did get the Brayville one, and I was really happy that we did, it turned out, because I needed the, like, the different blade attachments are really useful that you get with the Brayville. So, we actually used it to make tzatziki the other night, to shred the cucumber. It was super fun. Now I want to put everything into the food processor. But yeah, we ended up moving the I had my cold brew tea maker on the counter, so essentially it was a compromise. I moved the tea maker to the closet because I wasn't using it, to the pantry, wasn't using it as much, and we put the food processor on the counter instead. So we swap in and out. His rice maker lives in a cupboard, stuff like that. A lot of our appliances live in the pantry. Oh, thanks for that sub, M. Groening. Awesome. Already we are building up toward the next AMA. Remember, AMA and giveaway on Friday this week, people. Be there. Be there if you want to experience the first ever, like, and giveaway on our pro tip stream. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and food processors, let's face it, they're fun because they're just like, you grind it, like it eats it. It's so awesome. And it turns it into perfectly shredded little bits. And you're like, it would have taken me half an hour to do that. And it just took less than a second. I mean, there's cleanup time, but it was worth it. It was totally worth it. And the tzatziki was awesome. I love tzatziki. It's been too long.
thank you, Shadow Raven, the Tortoiseshell. I'm not gonna live that down.
Oh, yeah. All right, cool. Well, let's do our Zambies raid then, guys. Sounds fantastic. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you like our turtle shell. I hope that you got some good freehand tips and stuff like that. We'll probably work on turtle again tomorrow. I don't know if I want to do kind of a lighting thing, or if I want to do a little bit on his skin and stuff, or if I want to talk about different leather. Well, we'll think about it. We have lots of stuff that we could do. And I'd hate to just paint one little part of him and then put him aside. He's just so big and he's got so many opportunities. Like, we can talk about how to paint this little pebbly stuff too.
That would be cool.
Yeah. Food processors are the airbrushes of cooking. You're right. You use it, it makes one thing really fast and easy, and then you have cleanup. Karanika, that's so accurate. Shale.
Yeah. Collins was the one you definitely expect to say that.
Yeah, the Collins Southern. Yep.
All
All right,
right,
guys. Well, super. Have a great day, and I hope to see y'all tomorrow. Have fun. Enjoy your Tuesdays. Bye-bye.
Don't forget, we have a 4 o'clock today. We have Proctor's Crow's Nest, and I think that's the next programming for today, and the only programming for today. So yeah, 4 p.m. Central. Tune in for that, guys. It's gonna be fun. And I will see you guys later. Keep being awesome.